All right, so some things to keep in mind if you're going to use the opacity to line your shots up. So starting here, I want to make sure that my move tool, I turn off auto select layer. Otherwise, no matter what layer I'm on, if I'm looking through another layer, like I'll turn this layer down to 50% opacity, if I have auto select layer checked, then it will select the layer on top, even though what I want to be moving is the layer underneath. And so I can use my arrows, and I'm trying to line up the elements that I can virtually well. Now this one's a little interesting because there's a slight twist to it. As I tore the shell off, certain elements moved. But I think that's pretty good. And then I take it back to 100%, and I can look between the two. Then I go to the next one, put this at 50%, select the layer underneath, and try to line up what I can. In this case, the upper right-hand shell. Take it back to 100%. And see, even though those get very different, that shell stays the same. So it gives you a sense of continuity where you can see the change. Next one, put this at 50, go underneath, try to line something up. And as it gets more and more chaotic, it's going to be harder and harder to do. That feels pretty understandable. How this edge kind of blows out. And that feels pretty understandable. This one I can probably do a slightly better job lining up. And because you are encouraged to use a tripod for this, these movements should be small, these little adjustments that are needed. We're not talking about major changes being needed. Just slight adjustments. Oh, this is a shot I got while I removed the egg and then decided to put the egg back in. So if you find a layer that you don't actually want to use, like this layer, you just delete it at this point. So I'm going to go right from exposure 433 to 435. Actually, I might go right from 433 to 436 because I don't see this one as being that helpful. Yeah, and I can line it up. Yeah, makes sense. All right. So you're going through frame by frame, cleaning it up. So that we're focused as much as possible on the change that we're documenting and nothing else. And this is before we do any color processing or levels processing or anything like that. So lining up your exposures. Makes a big difference to take your time doing this. Yeah, I want that one lined up right there, even though other parts might move. And then it just becomes something else. I like this shot because there's a tiny little blue speck. It's like the tiny blue planet in a constellation, and it goes basically to black. All right, so now I've got them all lined up. Now I want to try cropping them. And instead of just, well, I can. Yeah, I'll do it this way. I'm going to take my crop tool, hold down Shift, and draw a square. And then I'm going to hit return. If I'm smart, I'll save it before I do all that. Because cropping does lose information. And you want to make sure that you know where you did it in your history in case you lose something that you need to get back. So now I crop to a square. And I try to line it up so it's nice and even, and visually pleasing. And now I can go through each exposure and make sure, I'm actually going to do it this way, turn them all off, and then turn them on individually to make sure that not only that they line up, but that the entire frame of the square is filled for each exposure. So starting with my first exposure, this is just this kind of velvety pillow or furry pillow that I shot everything on. Took a lot of vacuuming to get the egg out. That's lined up. That looks fine. That looks fine. That looks fine. What I don't want to see is something like this. Any of the grid peeking through. So that's what I'm checking for. And I also just want to see that the exposure is nice and clean for each shot. That it communicates well, that it makes sense. Again, this is before any color processing. And then we're going to test it to see if it all lines up. Okay, and it looks pretty good. So now, I go to Window, Timeline. This is the first time we've used this in photography. In the timeline window, I'm going to say Create Frame Animation. And we're animating here just to help line them up. And then in the upper right-hand corner of that timeline window, I left-click and I say Make Frames from Layers. And we'll put all my frames from my bottom layer up to my top layer. It will make a frame of them. The problem is it's in the reverse order that I took them. So I'm going to select the first frame just by left-clicking, hold down Shift and select the last frame. Then go to the window options and then reverse the frames. Doesn't do anything in my layers, but it will play the frames in the opposite order. Then while they're all selected, I'm also going to choose a timing, and I'm going to use 0.5 seconds. and I'm going to play them forever, so as a continuous loop. And now when I hit play, it will show them to me, and it will show me a little animation of that change, and it will help me see if anything's really unclear. Like if the egg jumps a lot in one frame or another, it just doesn't make sense. Now the pillow moves a little bit, but as long as I'm focused on the egg and the transformation happening to it, that shouldn't be a problem. You also might see frames that are redundant. So I might think, I don't really need this frame. I can go right from this to this. Or maybe that's helpful. But honestly, it feels like it gathers together instead of breaking apart at that point. So I think I might want to address that a little differently in how I line it up. Okay, so to do that, to go back to before I cropped, I find my cropping in my history. I also saved it to there. I go back to there, and I want to find that frame. So turn off all my other layers until I get there. I know it's a pain because I have 40-something layers. And it's between these two. Sorry, between those two. And what I think I want to do is just line that up a little differently underneath. No, that doesn't work. This is why we shoot more frames than we need. Okay, now let's try that cropping. But I know I'm limited in my cropping. I can't go beyond these edges. So let's go to my first frame. I know I have to stay within these parameters. Find a new crop box. Maybe give myself a little bit more space this time. Like so. Okay.